Admiral Zephyr Kethval had conquered 17 star systems, commanded fleets that made entire civilizations surrender at the mere sight of her banner, and brought the mighty Corvani Empire to its knees with nothing but tactical brilliance and an iron will. She was the most feared military strategist in the Andromeda sector, a princess whose very name made seasoned warriors tremble. But none of that mattered now, because 3 months ago, her beloved daughter had married a human, one of those supposedly weak, primitive creatures from a backwater planet called Earth. And now, as Zephyr stood on the command bridge of her flagship watching her daughter effortlessly dismantle a Corvani dreadnought with techniques she'd never seen before, one terrifying thought echoed through her mind. What exactly had these humans taught her daughter? And, more importantly, what were humans truly capable of when someone they loved was threatened? The answer would reshape the galaxy forever. Admiral Zephyr Kethval stood before the massive viewing screen of her flagship, the Stellar Dominance, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace rush past. Her 4 arms were crossed behind her back in perfect military posture, but her mind was far from the tactical reports scrolling across her neural interface. Instead, she was thinking about her daughter's wedding 3 months ago and how everything had changed since then. Princess Lyanna Kethval had always been special, even among the Zeltharian royal family, known throughout the galaxy for their superior intellect and tactical prowess. Lyanna stood out. At 25 standard years, she had already earned 3 advanced degrees in xenobiology, quantum mechanics, and interstellar warfare. She was supposed to be the perfect heir to Zephyr's military legacy, destined to lead the Zeltharian Defense Force to even greater victories. But then she had met Marcus Chun. Zephyr's purple-tinged skin darkened with frustration as she remembered that day. The Galactic Council Summit on Nexus Prime, where representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to discuss trade agreements and territorial disputes. Earth had only recently been granted observer status, their delegation consisting of a handful of scientists and diplomats from their fledgling space program. They were considered little more than curiosities by most attendees, primitives who had barely achieved faster-than-light travel and whose military capabilities were laughable compared to established galactic powers. Marcus Chun had been part of their scientific contingent, xenoarchaeologists studying ancient civilizations across the galaxy. Zephyr had to admit, grudgingly, that the human was intelligent. During the summit, he had presented a fascinating paper on the ruins found on Kepler 442b, offering insights that had eluded Zeltharian scholars for decades. But intelligence wasn't enough to justify what happened next. Lyanna had approached him after his presentation, supposedly to discuss archaeological techniques. What followed was 3 days of intense conversation, late-night walks through the gardens of the Nexus Embassy, and what her daughter had breathlessly described as the most intellectually stimulating experience of my life. By the end of the summit, Lyanna had announced her intention to visit Earth for research purposes. Zephyr had tried to forbid it, of course. Earth was a backwater world, barely civilized, with gravity that was uncomfortably high for most galactic species, and an atmosphere that required breathing apparatus for extended stays. But Lyanna had inherited her mother's stubbornness along with her tactical mind. She had gone anyway, using her diplomatic status to secure passage on a merchant vessel. The reports Zephyr received during Lyanna's 6-month stay on Earth had been confusing. Her daughter was indeed conducting legitimate archaeological research, working with human institutions to study artifacts from various civilizations. But she was also spending considerable time with Marcus Chun, learning about human culture, history, and philosophy. Most puzzling of all, she had begun training in something called martial arts, apparently some sort of primitive combat system practiced by humans. When Lyanna returned to Zephyr Prime, she was different, more focused, more confident, and displaying a calmness that seemed almost supernatural. She also announced her engagement to Marcus Chun, to the shock of the entire royal court. Zephyr had opposed the marriage vehemently. Not out of prejudice, the Zeltharian Empire prided itself on being inclusive of all species, but out of practical concerns. Humans lived such brief lives compared to Zeltharians. Marcus would be elderly while Lyanna was still in her prime. Their children would be half-breeds, potentially facing discrimination and identity issues. And politically, the marriage would be seen as a sign of weakness, the royal family allying itself with one of the galaxy's most insignificant powers. But Lyanna had been adamant. She spoke of love, of intellectual compatibility, of learning things from Marcus that no Zeltharian could teach her. She had even demonstrated some of her human fighting techniques to the court, movements that seemed to flow like water while striking with devastating precision. The display had been impressive, but Zephyra had dismissed it as merely an interesting novelty. The wedding itself had been a diplomatic nightmare. Half the galactic powers had refused to attend, considering it beneath their dignity. The other half had come purely out of curiosity or to curry favor with the Zeltharian Empire. Marcus's family had made the long journey from Earth, looking overwhelmed but proud as they witnessed their son marry into one of the most powerful families in the galaxy. Zephyra had walked her daughter down the aisle, following ancient Zeltharian traditions while incorporating human customs that seemed primitive and sentimental. When the ceremony was complete and Lyanna officially became Princess Lyanna Chun Kethval, Zephyra had felt a deep sense of loss, not just of her daughter, but of the carefully planned future she had envisioned for the royal bloodline. Now, 3 months later, that sense of loss had been replaced by something else entirely: bewilderment. The communication chime interrupted her thoughts, and her aide commander Vextar appeared on the bridge with a formal salute. "Admiral, we've received a priority transmission from the Corvani border. Fleet Admiral Threx is requesting immediate assistance." Zephyra turned, her interest piqued. The Corvanis were longtime enemies of the Zeltharian Empire, their territorial expansion bringing them into regular conflict with Zeltharian colonies. Threx was one of her most capable fleet commanders, not given to panic or unnecessary requests for reinforcement. "Display the message." The viewing screen shifted to show Threx's scarred face, his usual composed expression replaced by something that looked uncomfortably like fear. "Admiral Kethval, we have a situation at the Zirian system. The Corvanis have launched a massive assault on our mining colonies. 3 dreadnoughts, supported by carrier groups and planetary bombardment platforms. Our initial defensive fleet has been neutralized." Zephyra's eyes narrowed. Threx commanded some of the finest ships and officers in the Zeltharian Navy. For him to lose an entire defensive fleet suggested the Corvanis had brought overwhelming force to bear. "What are your current assets, Admiral Threx?" 2 battle cruisers for destroyers and a handful of support vessels. "We're heavily outnumbered, but we're holding position at the outer system perimeter. The colonists are evacuating, but they need more time." "Admiral," Threx paused, and Zephyra could see the conflict in his expression. "I've also received an unusual volunteer for this operation." "Explain." "Princess Lyanna Chun Kethval has arrived in the system aboard her personal vessel. She's requesting permission to assist in the defense." Zephyra felt her blood chill. Lyanna was an accomplished pilot and had received military training as befitted her royal status, but she had never seen actual combat. The idea of her daughter facing Corvani dreadnoughts in her light scout ship was unthinkable. "Absolutely not. Order the princess to withdraw immediately to safe distance and return to Zelthara Prime." "Ma'am, she's refusing to acknowledge that order. She claims operational authority as a member of the royal family and has already engaged enemy scouts on the system perimeter." The bridge fell silent. Zephyr stared at the transmission, processing what she had just heard. Lyanna was not just disobeying a direct military order. She was actively engaging enemy forces without authorization. "Admiral, with all due respect," Threx continued, "you need to see what she's doing out here. Her combat performance is unprecedented. She's using tactics and maneuvers I've never encountered before. In the past 2 hours, she's single-handedly destroyed 6 Corvani fighters and disabled a corvette. The enemy seems as confused as we are. Zephyra closed her eyes, feeling a headache building behind her temples. Her daughter had always been headstrong, but this was beyond anything she had expected. Set course for the Zirian system, maximum speed. Signal all available ships in the sector to converge on our position. And patch me through to Princess Lina directly. Yes, Admiral. The screen flickered, and suddenly, Lina's face appeared. She was in the cockpit of her ship, apparently in the middle of combat maneuvers. Her expression was calm, almost serene, but there was something different about her eyes, a focus and intensity that Zephyra had never seen before. Hello, Mother. I was wondering when you'd call. Lina, what do you think you're doing? You have no business engaging enemy forces without proper support and authorization. I'm protecting Zeltharian citizens, which is both my right and my duty as a member of the royal family. Lina's ship shook slightly as she executed what appeared to be an impossible evasive maneuver. Besides, Marcus taught me that sometimes you have to stand up for what's right, regardless of what the rulebook says. Marcus taught you? Zephyra's voice rose despite her efforts to remain calm. What exactly did that human teach you? Many things. Patience. Focus. The importance of understanding your enemy before you fight them. He spent considerable time studying human military history and philosophy, you know. Humans may not have our technology or our natural advantages, but they have something else, something that makes them remarkably effective warriors when they choose to be. Another explosion rocked Lina's ship, but she seemed completely unperturbed. Her hands moved over the controls with fluid grace, each movement precise and economical. I'm ordering you to withdraw to safe distance until our fleet arrives. I'm afraid I can't do that, Mother. There are still civilians in the evacuation zone, and Admiral Threx doesn't have the ships to protect them and engage the main Corvani force simultaneously. Someone needs to buy them time. One ship cannot make a difference against a force of that size. Watch and learn. The transmission cut off, leaving Zephyra staring at a blank screen. Around her, the bridge crew maintained professional silence, but she could feel their curiosity and concern. The admiral of the Zeltharian Defense Force had just been dismissed by her own daughter in front of her officers during a combat situation. Sir, Communications Officer Yethra spoke up hesitantly. We're receiving tactical data from the Zirian system. Would you like to monitor Princess Lina's engagement? Zephyra nodded curtly. The main screen shifted to display a real-time tactical overview of the battle. The Corvani force was massive, 3 dreadnoughts, each the size of a small city, accompanied by carrier groups launching swarms of fighters. Admiral Threx's remaining ships were positioned defensively around the evacuation zone, clearly outgunned and outnumbered. And then there was a single red dot moving through the enemy formation with impossible speed and agility. As Zephyra watched, that had engaged a squadron of Corvani fighters, weaving between their fire with movements that seemed to defy the laws of physics. One by one, the enemy ships exploded or spiraled away disabled. How is she doing that? Navigator Corlith whispered. Zephyra had no answer. Lina's ship was moving in patterns she had never seen before, using micro-jumps and vector changes that should have been impossible to calculate in real time. More importantly, she seemed to be anticipating enemy movements before they happened, positioning herself perfectly to exploit weaknesses in their formations. Admiral, Tactical Officer Zendar reported, Princess Lina has just penetrated the enemy destroyer screen. She's heading directly for the lead dreadnought. That's suicide, Zephyra breathed. But as they watched, Lina's ship dance through the massive vessel's defensive fire, striking precise points along its hull with surgical accuracy. Within minutes, the dreadnought's primary weapons array went dark, then its shield generators, then its engine core. The bridge erupted in shocked exclamations as the massive Corvani vessel, pride of their fleet, went dark and began drifting helplessly through space. Tactical analysis, Zephyra ordered, her voice carefully controlled. Ma'am, Princess Lina targeted specific vulnerable points that we didn't even know existed on Corvani dreadnoughts. Her strike patterns suggest detailed knowledge of their internal systems and structural weaknesses. It's as if she had the ship's blueprints. Zephyra stared at the display as her daughter's ship emerged from the drifting dreadnought and began engaging the second massive vessel. The same precision, the same impossible movements, the same devastating effectiveness. Commander Vextar increased speed to maximum emergency thrust and signal the fleet. I want every available ship converging on Zirian immediately. Yes, Admiral. Estimated arrival time at current speed is 6 hours. 6 hours. Zephyra looked at the tactical display again, watching her daughter single-handedly dismantling the pride of the Corvani fleet. The question that had been nagging at her since the wedding was becoming impossible to ignore. What exactly had Marcus Chun taught her daughter? And, more importantly, what were humans really capable of when properly motivated? As the stellar dominance hurtled through hyperspace toward what should have been a hopeless battle, Admiral Zephyr Kethval began to suspect that she had severely underestimated both her new son-in-law and the species he represented. The galaxy's most feared military strategist was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemies were the ones you never saw coming. And sometimes the most powerful allies came from the most unexpected places. The journey to the Zirian system felt like the longest 6 hours of Admiral Zephyra Kethval's life. She stood on the bridge of the stellar dominance, monitoring the tactical feeds from the battle zone while trying to understand what she was witnessing. Her daughter had now disabled 2 of the 3 Corvani dreadnoughts and was systematically eliminating their fighter escorts with a precision that bordered on the supernatural. Admiral, Communications Officer Yethare announced, "We're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's marked Priority Diplomatic and encrypted with royal family codes." Zephyr frowned. Earth rarely initiated contact with the Zeltharian Empire, and never on such short notice. "Put it through to my private chamber." She made her way to the Admiral's quarters, a spacious suite behind the bridge that served as both her office and personal sanctuary during long campaigns. The viewing screen activated, revealing the face of Marcus Chun. He was in what appeared to be a simple apartment, wearing casual human clothing, but his expression was serious. "Admiral Kethval, I hope this message reaches you quickly. I've been monitoring the situation at Zirian through Earth's intelligence networks." Zephyra's eyebrows rose. Earth has intelligence networks capable of real-time monitoring of conflicts in the Andromeda sector? More than you might expect. But that's not why I'm calling. I know Lina is in danger, and I know you're concerned about the techniques she's using. You have questions about what I taught her during her time on Earth. Marcus paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "Admiral, I need to tell you some things about humanity that aren't common knowledge in the galactic community. Things we've deliberately kept quiet because we've learned it's usually better to be underestimated than overestimated." The transmission quality was remarkably clear for such a long-distance communication, Zephyr noted. Either Earth's technology had improved dramatically, or they had been hiding their capabilities from the beginning. "Your daughter came to Earth because she was curious about our archaeological methods," Marcus continued. "But what she discovered was something much more significant. She learned about human military history, our approach to warfare, and, most importantly, our philosophy of adaptive combat." Marcus stood and moved to a wall covered with what appeared to be historical documents and photographs. "Admiral, in our relatively brief history, humans have fought over 15,000 major wars. We've developed combat techniques and strategic thinking under pressure that most species never experience. Not because we're naturally violent, but because our world was challenging." He gestured to one of the photographs, showing what appeared to be human soldiers in primitive armor. "When Lina first arrived, she was amazed by our historical records. Your people have been spacefaring for over 2 millennia, but you've fought perhaps a dozen significant conflicts in that time. You're incredibly advanced, but your approach to warfare is theoretical. Zephyra felt a chill of understanding beginning to form. Continue. Earth was different. We had no unified government until very recently. Different tribes, nations, and civilizations competing for limited resources on a single world. We learned warfare not as a science, but as an art of survival. Every technique, every strategy, every tactical innovation was tested under the most brutal conditions imaginable. Actual mortal combat against enemies who knew us intimately. Marcus moved to another section of the wall, showing what appeared to be ancient texts and diagrams. Lioness spent months studying our military history. Sun Tzu's Art of War, Clausewitz's theories on the nature of conflict, Miyamoto Musashi's philosophy of individual combat excellence. She learned about adaptive tactics, psychological warfare, and something we call thinking outside the box. And the martial arts? Zephyra asked, remembering the fluid movements her daughter had displayed. That was perhaps the most important part of her education. Human martial arts aren't just about physical combat. They're about mental discipline, situational awareness, and the ability to remain calm under extreme pressure. I introduced her to several masters, including my grandfather, who spent 60 years perfecting his understanding of combat philosophy. Marcus smiled slightly. Your daughter has a remarkable mind, Admiral. She absorbed these teachings faster than any human I've ever seen. But more than that, she began combining human tactical thinking with Zeltharian strategic capabilities. The result is, well, I think you're seeing the result right now. The transmission paused as Marcus seemed to receive some sort of message. His expression became more serious. Admiral, the reason I'm calling isn't just to explain Lioness training. Earth's long-range sensors are detecting a much larger Corvani force moving towards Zirian. 3 more battle groups, including their newest Dreadnought class. They'll arrive in approximately 4 hours. Zephyr's blood went cold. That's impossible. Our intelligence networks show no such force in Corvani space. Human intelligence gathering operates differently than yours. We've been quietly monitoring all major galactic powers for the past 50 years. The Corvanis have been building this fleet in secret, using hidden shipyards in the Outer Rim. This attack on Zirian isn't random. It's a test of Zeltharian response capabilities before a much larger offensive. Marcus moved to what appeared to be a tactical display, showing star charts and fleet movements. The Corvanis believe they can defeat the Zeltharian Empire in direct confrontation. They've studied your tactics for decades and developed counter-strategies, but they haven't accounted for human influence in your military thinking. Human influence? Admiral, I'm going to transmit a complete tactical analysis of Corvani military doctrine, along with suggested countermeasures based on human asymmetric warfare principles. These techniques have never been used in galactic-scale conflicts. The Corvanis won't know how to respond. The display filled with complex diagrams and strategic analyses. Zephyra found herself staring at tactical concepts she had never encountered. Fluid battlefield adaptation, misdirection strategies, and something called guerrilla fleet tactics that seemed to turn traditional space warfare doctrine on its head. This is extraordinary, she murmured. There's more. Earth has been developing certain capabilities that we've kept hidden from the galactic community. We've learned from studying every major conflict in recorded galactic history. We know how civilizations rise and fall, how wars are won and lost, and most importantly, how to survive when everyone underestimates you. Marcus leaned forward, his expression intense. Admiral, I'm offering Earth's full support for the defense of Zirian. Not just intelligence and tactical analysis, but active military assistance. Earth doesn't have a fleet capable of engaging Corvani dreadnoughts. Actually, we do. The transmission shifted to show what appeared to be a hidden asteroid base. Dozens of ships were visible, but their design was unlike anything Zephyra had ever seen. They were smaller than traditional battle cruisers, but appeared to be heavily armed and incorporating technology she didn't recognize. These ships were built using a combination of human engineering philosophy and recovered alien technology from archaeological sites. Lyanna actually helped design several of the tactical systems. We've been waiting for the right moment to reveal them. Zephyr stared at the display in shock. How many ships? Enough to change the balance of power in this sector. But, Admiral, there's something else you need to understand. This isn't just about defending Zirian. The Corvanis are testing Zeltharian resolve before launching a full-scale invasion of your territory. If they succeed here, they'll move against your core worlds within months. The implications hit Zephyr like a physical blow. The Corvani Empire had been a persistent threat, but always contained by mutual deterrence. If they had secretly built a fleet capable of challenging Zeltharian supremacy, the entire galactic balance of power was at risk. "What do you want in return?" she asked. "Nothing," Marcus replied simply. "Lyanna is my wife. Your people are her family. Earth protects its own." The transmission ended, leaving Zephyr alone with her thoughts and a wealth of tactical information that challenged everything she thought she knew about warfare. She returned to the bridge, where the battle at Zirian continued to unfold. "Status report," she ordered. "Princess Lyanna has disabled the third dreadnought." Tactical Officer Zendar reported with obvious awe. "The remaining Corvani forces are in full retreat. Admiral Threx reports minimal casualties among our fleet and successful evacuation of all civilian personnel. Any word on the princess?" She's requesting permission to pursue the retreating enemy fleet." Zephyr almost laughed despite the situation. Her daughter had single-handedly defeated a force that should have overwhelmed an entire battle group, and now she wanted to chase down the survivors. The combination of Zeltharian tactical brilliance and human combat philosophy was apparently formidable indeed. "Denied. Order her to hold position and await our arrival." "Ma'am," she acknowledges the order, but requests immediate strategic consultation upon your arrival. She says she has information about larger Corvani movements that require immediate attention. Zephyr nodded, unsurprised. If Marcus's intelligence was accurate, Lyanna had probably detected signs of the incoming reinforcements. Her daughter had always been perceptive, but her time with humans had apparently sharpened those instincts considerably. "Admiral," Communications Officer Yethare announced, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. They're requesting immediate information about the Zirian engagement, and they're asking about Princess Lyanna's combat performance specifically." That was troubling. News of the engagement had apparently spread quickly through diplomatic channels. The galactic community would be very interested in understanding how a single Zeltharian ship had defeated a major Corvani battle group. Inform the Council that will provide a full tactical briefing once the situation is stabilized. For now, classify all information about Princess Lyanna's specific methods as restricted military intelligence. Understood, Admiral. As the stellar dominance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zirian system, Zephyr found herself looking at the aftermath of the most lopsided military victory in recent memory. 3 disabled Corvani dreadnoughts drifted in space, surrounded by the wreckage of their escort vessels. Admiral Threx's ships were moving in standard salvage formation, securing the area and beginning rescue operations for Corvani survivors. "Admiral Kethval," Threx's voice came over the communication system. "Welcome to Zirian. I have to say, in 30 years of military service, I've never seen anything like what your daughter accomplished here today. Request immediate conference with Princess Lyanna and your senior staff. We need to discuss intelligence regarding additional Corvani forces." "Additional forces?" 3 more battle groups, Admiral. Estimated arrival in less than 4 hours. The communication channel fell silent for several long moments. "Admiral," Threx finally responded, "with respect, we don't have the fleet's strength to engage a force of that magnitude. Even with Princess Lyanna's unique capabilities, we'd be overwhelmed." "That may not be our only option," Zephyr said, thinking about Marcus's offer of Earth assistance. "Prepare for emergency strategic conference." "And, Admiral?" "Yes, ma'am. I want a complete tactical analysis of everything my daughter did during this engagement. Every maneuver, Every targeting decision, every communication. I have a feeling we're going to need to understand her methods very quickly. As her flagship moved toward the rendezvous point with Lina's vessel, Zephyra reflected on the events of the past few hours. Her daughter had not just won a battle. She had demonstrated capabilities that could fundamentally change the nature of galactic warfare. The question was whether the Zoltharian Empire was ready for the implications of having humans as allies, and whether the galaxy was ready for the emergence of Earth as a true military power. Looking at the disabled Corvani dreadnoughts, massive vessels that represented the pinnacle of alien military engineering, now floating helplessly in space after being defeated by a single ship piloted by her daughter, Admiral Zephyr Kethval, began to understand that the galaxy was about to become a much more dangerous and unpredictable place. And for the first time since the wedding, she began to think that Marcus Chun might be exactly the right husband for her daughter after all. The conference aboard the Stellar Dominance brought together the most senior military minds of the Zoltharian fleet, but Admiral Zephyr Kethval found herself focusing entirely on her daughter. Princess Lina Chun Kethval sat at the tactical display table with perfect composure, showing no signs of fatigue despite having just completed the most extraordinary single-ship combat engagement in recorded military history. The Corvani reinforcements will arrive in 3 hours and 47 minutes, Lina reported, her voice calm and professional. 3 battle groups, each centered around their new Sovereign-class dreadnoughts. These ships are 30% larger than the ones I engaged, with significantly upgraded armor and weaponry. Admiral Threx leaned forward, studying the tactical projections. Princess, with all due respect, how could you possibly know their exact arrival time and fleet composition? Lina smiled slightly. Marcus taught me to always gather more information than your enemy expects you to have. Human intelligence techniques are comprehensive. She manipulated the holographic display, showing detailed specifications of Corvani ships that supposedly didn't exist. The Sovereign-class dreadnoughts carry quantum disruptor cannons capable of penetrating our standard shield configurations. Their fighter complement has been increased by 40%, and they're equipped with new stealth technology that makes them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Zephyra studied her daughter's face, looking for some sign of how she had acquired this intelligence. Lina, these specifications, some of them are for classified Corvani projects. How do you know about them? Because Earth has been preparing for this conflict for much longer than anyone realizes, Lina replied. Mother, there's something I need to show you. She activated her personal communication device, and suddenly, Marcus Chen's image appeared as a hologram at the conference table. The human looked tired but alert, and Zephyr noticed he was wearing what appeared to be a military uniform she didn't recognize. Admiral Kethval, Admiral Threx, Marcus said with a formal nod. I'm afraid we need to accelerate our timeline significantly. Earthfleet Command has been monitoring Corvani movements, and they've just launched additional forces from 3 hidden staging areas. You're not facing 3 battle groups, you're facing 9. The conference room fell silent. Admiral Threx's face went pale, and several junior officers exchanged alarmed glances. 9 battle groups, Threx whispered. That's nearly half the Corvani Imperial Navy. It's actually 63% of their operational fleet, Marcus corrected. We have detailed intelligence on their force structure, deployment patterns, and strategic objectives. This isn't just an attack on Zirian. It's the opening move of a full-scale invasion designed to cripple the Zoltharian Empire's defensive capabilities. Zephyra felt a cold certainty settling in her stomach. They mean to destroy our fleet here, then move against our core worlds while we're unable to respond. Exactly. But they've made one crucial error in their calculations. Marcus's image gestured, and the holographic display filled with new data. They don't know about Earth's military capabilities, and they don't understand what Princess Lina learned during her time with us. Marcus, Lina said, show them the fleet. The display shifted to show a view of space that took Zephyr's breath away. Dozens of ships hung in perfect formation against the star field. But they were unlike any vessel she had ever seen. They were sleek, angular craft that seemed to blend technology from multiple civilizations with design principles that were entirely alien to galactic military thinking. Earth Defense Fleet, Task Force 7, Marcus announced. 48 ships, including 12 heavy cruisers equipped with adaptive weapons systems and quantum jump drives. We've been building this fleet for the past 20 years using technology recovered from archaeological sites across the galaxy, combined with human engineering principles. Admiral Threx studied the display with obvious amazement. Those ships, they incorporate design elements from at least 6 different civilizations. How did you manage to integrate such diverse technologies? Because humans approach problems differently, Marcus explained. Most galactic species develop technology linearly, building on their own innovations. Humans are natural synthesizers. We study everything, learn from everyone, and combine the best elements into something new. One of the ships in the formation moved closer to the recording device, and Zephyra could see details that made her reassess everything she thought she knew about human capabilities. The vessel's hull was covered with what appeared to be adaptive armor. Its weapon systems were modular and could apparently be reconfigured in real time, and its drive system seemed to operate on principles she didn't recognize. The quantum jump drives allow for tactical range teleportation, Lyanna explained, clearly proud of her husband's people. A ship can instantly relocate anywhere within 100,000 kilometers, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. Impossible, très mutuel. Quantum jump technology has been theoretical for centuries. The energy requirements alone are manageable if you approach the problem from a different angle, Marcus interrupted. Human engineers don't accept that something is impossible just because conventional wisdom says so. We find ways around limitations rather than accepting them. Zephyra was beginning to understand the scope of what she was facing. Marcus, why reveal these capabilities now? Earth could have remained hidden, let the Zeltharians and Corvanis exhaust each other, then emerged as a major power. Because Lyanna is family now, Marcus replied simply. And because Earth learned long ago that the best way to prevent wars is to end them quickly and decisively when they start. The holographic display shifted again, showing tactical projections for the coming battle. Admiral Kethval, I'm requesting permission to coordinate a joint defense of Zirion. Earth Fleet will handle the main Corvani battle groups, while your forces protect the evacuation zones and provide strategic support. You're talking about a single task force engaging 9 Corvani battle groups, Admiral Threx said incredulously. Even with advanced technology, the numbers don't add up. Lyanna leaned forward, her expression intense. Admiral, the numbers have never been what's important in warfare. Marcus taught me that humans won their most significant victories when they were vastly outnumbered. The key is understanding your enemy's weaknesses and exploiting them faster than they can adapt. She manipulated the display to show detailed analyses of Corvani tactical doctrine. The Corvanis fight like most galactic civilizations. They rely on superior technology, overwhelming force, and rigid adherence to proven strategies. They're excellent at conventional warfare, but they've never faced an opponent who fights unconventionally. Earthfleet tactics are based on human military history, Marcus added. Fluid battlefield adaptation, asymmetric engagement strategies, and psychological warfare. The Corvanis will be facing techniques they've never encountered before, implemented with technology they don't understand. Zephyra studied the tactical projections, her strategic mind analyzing the possibilities. The plan was audacious to the point of seeming suicidal, but there was an underlying logic to it that was almost compelling. What do you need from us? She asked. Coordinate your fleet movements with our tactical plan, Marcus replied. Your ships are more heavily armed and armored than ours. We need you to draw Corvani attention while we maneuver for optimal strike positions. And Admiral, yes, We need Princess Lina to act as tactical coordinator. Her understanding of both human and Zeltharian combat methods makes her uniquely qualified to manage the interface between our fleets. Lina nodded. I'll transfer to the lead Earth vessel to coordinate from their command center. Their tactical systems are more advanced than anything in the Zeltharian fleet. Absolutely not, Zephyr said immediately. You've already taken enough risks today. Mother, this isn't about risk anymore. It's about survival. The Corvani fleet has enough firepower to devastate our core worlds if they win here. And they will win if we fight this battle conventionally. Zephyra looked around the conference table at her senior officers. They were all veteran warriors, experienced in dozens of campaigns, but she could see the uncertainty in their faces. They were being asked to trust their lives and their empire to allies they had barely known existed until today. Admiral, Lina said quietly, Marcus's people have been studying galactic warfare for 50 years, learning from every conflict, every tactical innovation, every strategic mistake. They know things about fighting wars that no other civilization has ever discovered. But they've also been planning for this specific scenario, the rise of an aggressive empire that threatens the stability of the entire galaxy. The Corvanis aren't the first civilization to attempt galactic conquest, Marcus added. Human historians have identified at least 7 major empires that followed similar patterns over the past millennium. We know how they think, how they operate, and, most importantly, how they can be defeated. The communications system chimed, interrupting the discussion. Communications Officer Yethare's voice came through the speakers. Admiral, we're detecting massive hyperspace disturbances at the system perimeter. The Corvani reinforcements are arriving ahead of schedule. Zephyra felt her heart sink. They were out of time for planning and debate. How many ships? Scanning now. Admiral, I'm reading over 200 vessels. This is much larger than 3 battle groups. Marcus's expression didn't change, but Zephyr noticed his hands clench slightly. They committed more forces than our intelligence indicated. That's problematic. Problematic? Admiral Threx stood up, his voice rising. We're facing the entire Corvani Imperial Navy with a handful of experimental ships and untested tactics. Admiral Threx, Linus said calmly, please sit down. Panic isn't going to help anyone. She turned to address the hologram of her husband. Marcus, what's Earth Fleet's assessment? We can handle it, he replied, though Zephyr detected a slight tension in his voice. We'll need to modify our approach, but the fundamental strategy remains sound. The larger their force, the more vulnerable they are to the kind of tactics we're planning to use. Explain, Zephyra ordered. Large formations are inherently unwieldy. They rely on coordination and communication between hundreds of ships. Human tactics are designed to create chaos, to force enemy commanders to make decisions faster than they can process information. The bigger their fleet, the more opportunities we have to create confusion and exploit it. The tactical display updated to show the arriving Corvani fleet. It was indeed massive. Dreadnoughts, battle cruisers, carriers, and support vessels arranged in a formation that spoke of overwhelming confidence. They clearly expected to crush any Zeltharian resistance through sheer force of numbers. They don't even have scouts deployed properly, Lina observed with satisfaction. They're so confident in their overwhelming superiority that they're not bothering with proper reconnaissance. That's going to cost them. Admiral Kethval, Marcus said formally. Earth Fleet is requesting permission to commence operation. We need to engage them before they can establish full tactical coordination. Zephyra looked at her daughter, seeing in her face a combination of Zeltharian strategic brilliance and something new, a confidence and calm that seemed to come from deep understanding of combat principles that her people had never needed to develop. Permission granted, she said finally. Admiral Threx, coordinate fleet movements with Princess Lina. All ships are to follow Earth Fleet tactical directives until further notice. As the conference broke up and officers rushed to their stations, Zephyra found herself alone with Lina for a moment. Daughter, she said quietly, What have you gotten us into? Lioness smiled, and for the first time, Zephyra saw something in her expression that reminded her powerfully of Marcus Chun, a combination of intelligence, determination, and complete confidence in abilities that others couldn't fully understand. I've given us a chance to survive, Mother. And more importantly, I've given the galaxy a chance to see what happens when someone threatens Earth's family. As her daughter left to coordinate with the Earth fleet, Admiral Zephyr Kethval prepared for what would either be the most brilliant victory in Zeltharian military history or the most spectacular defeat. Either way, she was beginning to suspect that the galaxy would never be the same again. The Earth fleet materialized out of hyperspace like ghosts becoming solid, their quantum jump drives allowing them to appear exactly where they needed to be without the traditional exit vectors that enemy forces could predict and target. Admiral Zephyra Kethval watched from the bridge of the Stellar Dominance as 48 alien vessels took positions that seemed random until the tactical display revealed the underlying pattern. They're not forming a traditional battle line, Admiral Threx observed, his voice carrying a mixture of confusion and professional interest. Princess Lionna's voice came through the communication system from her position aboard the Earth Fleet flagship. Human fleet tactics don't rely on linear formations, Admiral. We're establishing what Marcus calls a web of engagement zones. Each ship can support any other ship instantly while maintaining maximum tactical flexibility. The Corvani fleet, meanwhile, had arranged itself in the classic hammer formation that had served their empire well for centuries. 3 massive dreadnought groups formed the heavy assault elements, while carrier groups provided fighter support and fast attack vessels screened the flanks. It was a formation designed to overwhelm through concentrated firepower and systematic destruction of enemy capabilities. Corvani fleet is hailing us, Communications Officer Yethare reported. Put them through. The main screen shifted to show the bridge of the lead Corvani dreadnought. Fleet Admiral Korthak appeared, his massive frame filling the command chair, his species' naturally aggressive features made more intimidating by ritual scarification that marked him as a veteran of dozens of campaigns. Admiral Kethval. Korthak's voice was a deep rumble that spoke of absolute confidence. I offer you one opportunity to surrender. Your pathetic fleet cannot stand against the might of the Corvani Empire. Yield now, and your crews will be treated according to the galactic conventions of war. Admiral Korthak, Zephyra replied calmly. I'm afraid I must decline your generous offer. Korthak's eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display visible behind Zephyra. You have fewer than 30 ships against our 200. Even Zeltharian arrogance has limits. Surely, Admiral, Lionna's voice cut into the communication from the Earth flagship. You might want to recalculate those numbers. The tactical display on Korthak's bridge suddenly lit up with new contacts as the Earth fleet ships dropped their stealth systems simultaneously. The Corvani Admiral's expression shifted from confidence to confusion as his sensors registered ship designs he had never seen before, displaying energy signatures that didn't match any known galactic technology. What are those ships? Korthak demanded. Those, Zephyr said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, are my daughter's wedding presents from her husband's people. I suggest you reconsider your position, Admiral. Korthak cut the transmission abruptly, but not before Zephyr saw something she had never seen in a Corvani commander's face before. Uncertainty. Earth Fleet Command to all units. Marcus Chen's voice came through the tactical network. Operation Prometheus is now active. Remember, we're not just fighting for territory or resources today. We're fighting for family. The response that came back over the communication channels sent chills down Zephyr's spine. Dozens of human voices, speaking in unison with a calm determination that spoke of absolute resolve. For family. The battle began not with the traditional exchange of long-range fire, but with something that defied every tactical manual in the galactic military database. The Earth fleet ships simply vanished. Where did they go? Admiral Threx demanded, staring at sensor displays that showed empty space where 48 ships had been moments before. Quantum jump drives allow for tactical invisibility, Lyanna explained. The ships are still there, but they're existing in a slightly different dimensional phase. They can observe and target normally, but they can't be detected or fired upon. That's impossible, Threx muttered. The energy requirements for that many ships. His words were cut off as the Corvani fleet erupted in chaos. Earth fleet ships were materializing inside the enemy formation, appearing directly behind Corvani vessels, and unleashing devastating close-range attacks before vanishing again. The largest Corvani dreadnought, Admiral Korthak's flagship, shuddered under a concentrated assault from 3 Earth-heavy cruisers that had appeared within its shield perimeter. How are they penetrating shields? Tactical Officer Zendar asked in amazement. They're not penetrating them, Lyanna replied. They're appearing inside them. Quantum jump technology allows for precision placement that bypasses traditional defensive systems entirely. On the tactical display, the Corvani formation was beginning to collapse into chaos as commanders tried to respond to attacks coming from directions that should have been impossible. Their ships were turning to engage targets that disappeared before weapons could lock on, only to find new threats materializing in positions they had considered secure. Zeltharian Fleet, this is Earth Fleet Command. Marcus's voice came through the speakers. We need you to begin Phase 2 of the operation. Draw their remaining battle groups toward your position while we complete disruption of their command and control systems. Understood, Zephyr replied. All ships advance to engagement range and commence concentrated fire on the trailing battle group. Make them think we're attempting a traditional assault. The Zeltharian fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their heavy cruisers and battle destroyers presenting an impressive sight as they closed with the enemy. The Corvanis, desperate to regain control of a battle that was spiraling beyond their understanding, redirected 2 battle groups to meet what appeared to be a conventional threat they knew how to handle. That was exactly what the Earth fleet had been waiting for. As the Corvani ships moved to engage the Zeltharians, they exposed their flanks and rear areas to attack vectors they hadn't protected. Earth fleet vessels materialized in perfect coordination, striking at propulsion systems, communication arrays, and weapons platforms with surgical precision. Admiral, Lyanna's voice carried a note of satisfaction. Marcus wants you to see something specific. Focus your sensors on the Corvani flagship. Zephyr watched as 3 Earth-heavy cruisers appeared in a triangular formation around Korthak's massive dreadnought. But instead of firing immediately, they held position, their weapons trained on specific points of the enemy vessel's hull. Marcus's voice came through on an open channel that the Corvanis could also hear. Admiral Korthak, this is Commander Marcus Chun of the Earth Defense Fleet. Your ship is currently targeted by quantum torpedoes aimed at your reactor core, bridge, and life support systems. I suggest you surrender. Never. Korthak's response was immediate and predictable. Corvanis do not surrender to inferior species. I was hoping you'd say that, Marcus replied calmly. What happened next redefined Zephyr's understanding of what was possible in space combat. The 3 Earth ships opened fire simultaneously, but their weapons weren't aimed at the hull of the Corvani dreadnought. Instead, they fired what appeared to be specialized projectiles that passed through the ship's shields and armor as if they weren't there, striking specific internal systems with impossible accuracy. The massive Corvani flagship went dark in seconds. Not destroyed, not even seriously damaged, but completely disabled as its primary systems shut down in sequence. Ow! Admiral Threx whispered. Phase disruptor torpedoes, Lyanna explained. They exist in the same dimensional phase as the quantum jump drives. They can pass through normal matter until they're programmed to interact with specific molecular signatures. Marcus's people spent years analyzing Corvani technology to develop weapons that could selectively disable their systems without causing unnecessary casualties. Across the battlefield, similar scenarios were playing out as Earth fleet vessels systematically dismantled the Corvani fleet's combat capabilities. Ships weren't being destroyed, They were being neutralized, their crews left alive, but completely unable to fight. Corvani fleet, this is Admiral Kethval. Zephyr broadcasted on all frequencies. You have 1 minute to surrender before we allow our allies to demonstrate their more destructive capabilities. The response came not from Admiral Korthak, but from his second-in-command. Admiral Kethval, this is Captain Vorthak. Admiral Korthak has been relieved of command. We request terms of surrender. Zephyr looked at the tactical display, showing over 200 Corvani ships, 90% of them disabled and drifting helplessly in space. The entire engagement had lasted less than 30 minutes. Terms accepted, Captain. Maintain position and prepare for boarding parties to secure your vessels. As the immediate crisis ended, Zephyr found herself staring at a battlefield that looked like nothing she had ever seen. There's almost no debris, very few casualties, but an entire invasion fleet had been neutralized with an efficiency that bordered on the surgical. Princess Lana, she called over the communication system. What just happened here? Mother, you just witnessed the difference between fighting a war and ending a war. The Corvanis came here expecting a traditional battle. Ships destroying ships, massive casualties, victory through superior firepower. Instead, they encountered an approach to warfare they had never considered. Marcus's image appeared on the main screen, and Zephyr could see other humans working at control stations behind him. Admiral Kethval, Earth fleet has secured the battlefield. Corvani casualties are minimal, but their fleet is completely neutralized. We're detecting surrender signals from all remaining vessels. Commander Chen, Zephyr said formally, I owe you and your people a debt that I'm not sure how to repay. No debt necessary, Admiral. As I said, Lyanna is family now. Earth protects its family. But there's something more, isn't there? Zephyr asked, her strategic mind catching implications that went far beyond this single battle. Marcus nodded. The Corvani Empire built this fleet to conquer the Zeltharian territories and establish themselves as the dominant power in this sector. Their entire military doctrine was based on the assumption that galactic civilizations fight wars the same way they've fought them for millennia, with overwhelming force and traditional tactics. He paused, glancing at something off-screen. But Earth has been preparing for this kind of confrontation for decades. We've studied every major galactic conflict, analyzed every tactical innovation, learned from every strategic mistake. We know how empires rise and fall, how wars are won and lost, and, most importantly, how to prevent conflicts from escalating beyond control. You're talking about changing the fundamental nature of galactic warfare, Admiral Threx observed. Not changing it, Lyanna interjected. Evolving it. Human military thinking is based on adaptation, innovation, and finding unconventional solutions to complex problems. These techniques can be taught, shared, and integrated with existing tactical doctrines. Zephyr studied the tactical display one more time, seeing the disabled Corvani fleet and understanding the implications. The other galactic powers are going to want to know how this was accomplished. And they should know, Marcus agreed. Earth isn't interested in dominating anyone. We're interested in stability, peace, and the freedom to explore and grow. But we've learned that the best way to maintain peace is to make war too costly and unpredictable for aggressive powers to contemplate. As rescue and salvage operations began across the battlefield, Admiral Zephyr Kethval found herself contemplating a future that would be radically different from the past. Her daughter had married a human, and in doing so had brought the Zeltharian Empire into contact with a civilization that approached problems in ways that no one had ever imagined. The question now was whether the galaxy was ready for that change, and whether Earth was ready for the attention that this demonstration of their capabilities would inevitably bring. Looking at her daughter coordinating rescue operations with the same calm efficiency she had shown in combat, Zephyr began to suspect that the answer to both questions was going to be very interesting indeed. 3 months after the Battle of Zirion, Admiral Zephyr Kethval stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council, watching her daughter address representatives from over 300 worlds. Princess Lina Chun Kethval wore formal Zeltharian military dress, but Zephyr noticed that she had incorporated subtle elements of human design into the traditional uniform, practical modifications that spoke of a mind that thought beyond convention. Honored delegates, Lioness said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. The events at Zirian have forced us to confront fundamental questions about the nature of conflict in our galaxy. For too long, we have accepted that wars must be destructive, that victory requires the devastation of our enemies, and that peace can only be maintained through the threat of mutually assured destruction. The assembly was unusually quiet. Normally, speeches by junior members of royal families were met with polite but limited attention. Today, every delegate was listening intently, because the being addressing them had single-handedly redefined galactic warfare in the span of 30 minutes. Earth's intervention at Zirian demonstrated that there are alternatives to traditional military thinking. Conflicts can be resolved through superior strategy and technology rather than superior firepower. Enemies can be neutralized without being destroyed. Wars can be ended rather than simply won. Ambassador Kexthar of the Hegemony Alliance raised one of his four arms. Princess Chun Kethval, while the tactical innovations displayed by Earth Fleet were impressive, many of us are concerned about the implications of such advanced military technology being controlled by a single world. What assurances can you provide that Earth will not use these capabilities for aggressive purposes? Zephyr watched her daughter's response carefully. This was the question that had dominated galactic politics since news of the battle had spread. Earth had revealed military capabilities that surpassed anything in the known galaxy, deployed with a tactical sophistication that suggested years of secret preparation. Many civilizations were demanding answers, and some were suggesting preemptive action. Ambassador Kexthar, Lina replied calmly, I understand your concerns, and they're entirely reasonable. Earth's military capabilities are indeed significant, but I would like to invite you to consider their deployment. At Zirian, facing an enemy fleet of over 200 ships, Earth forces achieve complete tactical victory with minimal casualties on either side. Does that sound like the behavior of an aggressive, expansionist civilization? She gestured to the holographic display that filled the center of the chamber, showing tactical data from a battle. Earth's weapons were designed not to destroy, but to disable. Their strategy focused not on annihilation, but on neutralization. These are not the choices made by a species seeking conquest, but they're the choices made by a species preparing for conquest, interjected Ambassador Yethkol of the Outer Rim Coalition. A predator doesn't always kill its prey immediately. Sometimes it prefers to disable it first. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Zephyra felt tension building in the chamber, the kind of political pressure that could lead to unfortunate decisions if not carefully managed. Ambassador Yethkol, Linus said, you raise an important point about predatory behavior. Would you like to see what an actual galactic predator looks like? The holographic display shifted to show intelligence data about Corvani expansion over the past century. Star systems marked in red showed conquered territories, with detailed casualty figures and economic exploitation statistics. The Corvani Empire expanded through systematic conquest and subjugation. Billions of casualties, entire civilizations reduced to servitude, resources stripped from dozens of worlds. This is the pattern of galactic predators. Expansion through destruction, control through fear, wealth through exploitation. The display changed again, showing Earth's interactions with other civilizations over the past 50 years. Earth's pattern is completely different. Peaceful contact, scientific exchange, archaeological cooperation, and minimal territorial claims. Even their recent military intervention was purely defensive, protecting Zeltharian civilians and preventing a larger conflict. Ambassador Kexthar's expression was thoughtful. Princess, these patterns are indeed different, but patterns can change. A civilization's behavior can evolve, especially when they acquire significant new capabilities. You're absolutely right, Lina agreed, which is why Earth's government has decided to make their military innovations available to the Galactic Council. The assembly erupted in shocked exclamations. Zephyra felt her own surprise. This was the first she had heard of such a decision. Ladies and gentlemen, Lina continued, raising her voice to cut through the noise. My husband has asked me to present Earth's proposal for what they call the Galactic Defense Initiative. The holographic display, filled with technical specifications, tactical analyses, and implementation timelines. Earth is offering to share quantum jump technology, phase disruptor weapons, and advanced tactical coordination systems with any civilization that agrees to specific protocols for their use. What protocols? Ambassador Yeth Cole asked suspiciously. First, these technologies can only be used for defensive purposes or to prevent humanitarian disasters. Second, any civilization deploying these weapons must accept oversight from a joint Galactic Council monitoring committee. Third, aggressive use of Earth-derived technology will result in immediate technological isolation and possible military intervention. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed the implications. Earth was offering to eliminate their technological advantage in exchange for guarantees that the technology would not be misused. This is unprecedented, Ambassador Kexthar said slowly. No civilization in galactic history has voluntarily shared military superiority. Because no civilization in galactic history has approached warfare the way humans do, Lina replied. Earth's military philosophy is based on ending conflicts, not winning them. The fastest way to end conflicts is to make them impossible to sustain. Marcus Chen's image appeared as a hologram beside the tactical display. Even in the formal setting of the Galactic Council, he wore simple civilian clothing that somehow managed to convey both approachability and quiet authority. Honored delegates, Marcus said, Earth has been studying galactic history for the past century. We've identified patterns of expansion, conquest, and collapse that repeat across different civilizations and time periods. The galaxy is currently entering a phase where multiple species are developing the technological and military capabilities necessary for large-scale conquest. He gestured to a timeline that appeared in the holographic display. Historical analysis suggests that the galaxy is approximately 50 years away from a series of conflicts that could devastate dozens of civilizations and set back technological and cultural progress by centuries. You're predicting a galactic war? Ambassador Yeth Cole asked. We're predicting several galactic wars, potentially overlapping, driven by resource competition, territorial expansion, and the natural tendency of civilizations to test their military capabilities against their neighbors. The Corvani invasion of Zirian was an early example of this pattern. Marcus paused, allowing the implications to sink in. Earth's proposal is designed to prevent these conflicts by making them strategically pointless. If every major civilization has access to advanced defensive technologies and effective conflict resolution capabilities, the incentive for military expansion disappears. And if some civilizations refuse to participate in this system, Ambassador Kexthar asked, then they will find themselves facing the combined defensive capabilities of everyone else, Lina answered. Earth's technology is designed to be more effective when used cooperatively. A single civilization attempting to conquer others will face not just advanced defenses, but coordinated responses from multiple allies using integrated tactical systems. Zephyra watched the assembly as delegates began to understand the scope of what Earth was proposing. They weren't just offering military technology, they were suggesting a fundamental restructuring of galactic civilization around principles of cooperative defense rather than competitive expansion. There are costs to this proposal, Ambassador Yeth Cole pointed out. Civilizations would need to accept limitations on their military autonomy, submit to external oversight, and potentially sacrifice expansionist ambitions. True, Marcus agreed. But consider the alternatives. Historical analysis suggests that the coming conflicts will result in the destruction of at least 12 major civilizations and the regression of galactic technology by an average of 3 centuries. The costs of cooperation are significant, but the costs of competition are catastrophic. The debate that followed lasted for hours, with delegates raising concerns about sovereignty, cultural autonomy, and the practical challenges of implementing such a system. But Zephyr noticed that the tone of the discussion was shifting from suspicion to serious consideration. Finally, Ambassador Kexthar called for a formal response. Princess Chinkethval, Commander Chun, the Galactic Council appreciates Earth's proposal, but a decision of this magnitude requires extensive consultation with our respective governments. We request a 6-month period for consideration and negotiation. Of course, Lina replied. Earth is prepared to provide technical briefings, strategic analysis, and implementation support to any government that wishes to evaluate the proposal seriously. As the formal session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, Zephyra approached her daughter. Lina, did you know about this proposal before today? Marcus and I developed it together during my time on Earth. But we wanted to wait until the galaxy had seen a demonstration of what Earth's military technology could accomplish before presenting it. And if the Council rejects the proposal, Lina's expression became serious. Then, Earth will implement it unilaterally with civilizations that choose to participate. But, Mother, I don't think they'll reject it. The Corvani invasion scared everyone more than they're willing to admit. Delegates are realizing that if one medium-sized empire could threaten the Zoltharian Defense Force, what could a larger, more advanced civilization accomplish? Marcus appeared beside them, his hologram flickering slightly as the communication system adjusted to the less formal setting. Admiral Kethval, he said respectfully, I want to thank you for supporting Lina's presentation today. I know this situation has required considerable adjustments to your strategic thinking. Commander Chun, Zephyr replied. 3 months ago, I thought my daughter had made a foolish romantic decision that would complicate her life and weaken the royal bloodline. Today, I'm beginning to suspect that she may have made the most strategically brilliant marriage in galactic history. Marcus smiled. Admiral, I can promise you that Lina's strategic brilliance was entirely her own. Earth just provided some additional tools and perspectives. Those tools and perspectives may reshape civilization as we know it. That's the idea, Linus said. Mother, the galaxy is changing whether we guide that change or not. The question is whether we can influence it toward cooperation and stability, or whether we'll let it drift toward conflict and devastation. As they left the assembly hall, Zephyra found herself thinking about the future her daughter was helping to create. A galaxy where conflicts were resolved through superior strategy rather than superior firepower, where technological advancement served defensive rather than aggressive purposes, where cooperation was more rewarding than conquest. 6 months later, when the Galactic Council voted overwhelmingly to implement the Galactic Defense Initiative, Admiral Zephyr Kethval would look back on the day her daughter married a human as the moment when the galaxy began evolving towards something unprecedented in its history. Lasting peace achieved not through the balance of terror, but through the practical elimination of war as a viable option. And as she watched her daughter take her place as the first director of Galactic Defense Coordination, working alongside her human husband to build institutions that would protect billions of beings from the conflicts that had plagued the galaxy for millennia, Zephyr realized that sometimes the most important military victories were the ones that made future military victories unnecessary. The galaxy had learned that when humans fought for family, they didn't just win battles. They changed the rules of warfare itself.